TCSCOT thing. Yeah. Do you have any problem going to high power early so we can close out your constraints?
Last week from the near future, episode 008 for week 50 of 2023. First, postcards from some possible plausible futures. When I first saw one of these postcards in my mailbox, I was like, what is this? Some kind of ad for something? The handwriting looked really good, so I thought that the handwriting fontography must be getting super good, or maybe this was some kind of new generative writing, artificially written writing intelligence hadn't yet heard about because none of the podcasters had done their emergency podcast about it yet. And then the next one came a day or so later, and I was like, ooh, this is why Elliot Montgomery asked for my mailing address. Best Christmas postcards ever.
Not for me, kid. I don't live here.
Elliot, in his role over there at Autodesk Foresight team, is gradually integrating these adjacent ways of augmenting futures insights and foresights with these artifacts from possible futures. This is what we're all trying to do in this space. Augment and invigorate the otherwise very rational and analytic perspectives with some much-needed imagination. Speaking of much-needed imagination, you know how I've been railing on about creating this magazine from a possible future in which AI is as normal, ordinary, and everyday as water bottles you walk around with? We didn't have those when I was a kid. We just had water fountains. Well, here's a magazine I did for a client who wanted to augment their otherwise very analytic, not super evocative research to the autonomous vehicle future. So how did we make this? Well, we spent a few weeks debriefing the client's team of design researchers, market researchers, consumer insights researchers, as well as their UX designers and engineers from their manufacturing partner. Over a series of several workshops, we listened intently, both for the top-line insights as well as the less overt hopes, fears, dreams, and dreads they had collectively as an organization. And then we translated all of that through a unique kind of representation of a possible world we all might inhabit, a magazine that one could easily imagine has come from the near future in which autonomous vehicles are as normal, ordinary, and everyday as televisions we talk to and cars that try to park themselves. This kind of artifact captures the full breadth of a world in a way that a research report would be challenged to convey. So what the magazine is able to do is augment the insights from the research. It makes the research more visceral and almost cinematic, if I can apply that term to print media. The world comes to life. Yeah, it is kind of a cinema in a metaphorical sense if you think of how cinema is the translation of prose into a time-based visual story. You know, from screenplay, which is prose, to immersive visual presentation. This is one of the important values of design fiction. I suppose design fiction is a bit like production design or the director, translating the script as is written on the piece of paper into a visual form. Design fiction makes futures sensible and meaningfully augments the analysis and all the data and the scenarios. Plus, it's portable. I can hand this magazine to someone and they can ponder it in all kinds of situations, not just when they're sitting at their computer. Cognitively, design fictions integrate into our ways of sensing into futures differently from other forms of futures representations. Speaking of immersive visual presentations and futures representations, here's another artifact we did late this year. This one came from a possible future in which androids are amongst us and are about as fearsome and existentially threatening as a Sony Walkman. And speaking of a Sony Walkman, this book came from an adjacent speculative timeline in which Sony's prodigious robot R&D struck upon another commercial and cultural success even bigger than the Sony Walkman. Is your imagination strong enough to make sense of an adjacent future in which Sony's Aibo robotic dog was even more successful than the Sony Walkman? Can you imagine what the implications of that would be, and represent those implications in the form of a material cultural artifact? Think of all the ways portable music, or how about portable audio, generally speaking, has shaped the world directly and indirectly. Now, what would that world be like if rather than portable music, we were talking about intelligent robotic assistants, devices, and so on? Consider the full range of implications and symptoms with all the effort, resources, R&D, innovation capital that would be poured into creating androids, accessories, aftermarket tools, and add-ons, not to mention plausible advances in AI. Now, I'm not trying to predict anything, nor am I trying to argue one way or the other. Let's just assume that this has happened as it could have. It's plausible, even if you want to doubt its certainty or make some kind of useless pedantic argument about why it could not ever happen. Let's just try to say it has, and now we want to wander into this world as if we were an archaeologist who could travel into it and bring back artifacts to study and speculate about little corners of this speculative world and its ways. Imagine into this world as a design fiction artifact, I went ahead and created a kind of supermarket pulp paperback from that world where androids are just amongst us like water bottles, laptop sleeves, luggage with wheels, and anti-lock brakes. They just exist, and we assume their presence. And someone, me in this adjacent timeline, has taken it upon themselves to write a kind of pop culture guidebook to understanding their psyche. It's the kind of book you might get as a idle pastime, or perhaps you want to know what it is that this artificially intelligent critter is wondering about, and why you are having feelings towards it. What are its dreams, if we imagine they have dreams, as would be the case even if the rationalists do not believe machines can dream. Some would certainly impose such musings upon them for fun and for profit. This book is the book you would get while mindlessly browsing the bookshop at the airport while killing time. You'd remind yourself you heard about it and that Oprah's Dow had reviewed it favorably. Perhaps you glanced at a review seen in New Yorker magazine. This is another artifact from a plausible future meant to help sense into futures in a fresh, visceral way that your typical futures report isn't able to do. It's like an object pulled out of one of Cory Doctorow's thoughtful near-future science fiction stories and left on a table as a material cultural example from that world. Android's Dream of Electric Sheep is a design fiction artifact represented in the mundane archetype of a pulp paperback book that you are as likely to find accidentally discarded in a coffee shop or left behind in the seatback pocket of a self-piloted Uber air taxi. My retail mindset tells me to make these kinds of things because, first of all, it's fun to make, and second of all, it provides examples of the ways design fiction can work for fun and for profit. So head over to shop.nearfuturelaboratory.com to grab your copy, and while you're there, pick up one of these other artifacts from a possible future like TBD Catalog, a product catalog of speculative stuff you might find in an adjacent timeline or even in some near future. That's it for Last Week from the Near Future, episode 008 for week 50 of 2023. I'm Julian, and I'm out.
We have the data, and you're go for the align.
Cut. Go ahead, Dan. We're listening.